All right, we will go ahead and get the meeting started. This meeting is a meeting of the school board for the purpose of conducting the school corporation's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There will be time for public participation as indicated by the agenda. Our site is fully accessible. Any person requiring further accommodation should contact the superintendent at the school corporation central office. With that, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked Mr. Bertrand to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have roll call. All members are present. We do have a quorum. Next, we have mission statement. Mr. Clauser.
Yeah, thank you. Lebanon Community School Corporation challenges everyone every day to reach a new best.
Thank you so much. Now we will enter into a project hearing in the second preliminary determination hearing for the support and or objections to the proposed 2025 improvement project, which includes the renovation and improvements to Lebanon High School, Central Elementary School, construction of a possible student activity center, and various other improvements to facilities. With that, we will open up. I'll turn it over to Mr. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Parks, and good evening, everyone. As a reminder, this is the culmination of the legal steps that we have to go through in order to preliminarily determine to issue bonds for a specific project. Again, this is the second of two preliminary determination hearings, both of which have been advertised in the Lebanon Reporter. The project, or the hearing tonight, will go through project description, financial implications of the project. Then we will turn it over for any public comment, and then we'll culminate this one with 4 resolutions for the board to consider. So, as a reminder, the project in consideration here involves mainly two buildings within the school corporation, Lebanon High School as well as the existing Central Elementary School. At Lebanon High School, that will involve a cafeteria renovation of the administrative office space, renovation of locker rooms, as well as the addition of some locker rooms, the construction of a student activity center. Over at the existing Central Elementary, which is being taken offline as a K-5 building as we are constructing a new Central Elementary School, which sometimes makes these things confusing. But nonetheless, the existing Central Elementary School, approximately 65% of that will be dedicated to a full-time preschool, and there's some renovation that needs to take place in those classrooms, freshening that up and making that accessible for littler bodies than currently attend there. And then the other 35% of Central Elementary School will be renovated for administrative office space for district employees. As I mentioned last time, we are completely full at our current central office with 4 current district employees placed throughout the district wherever there is space. In addition to these construction or renovation projects, these projects will purchase buses as we replace 3 to 5 buses in any given year, a maintenance vehicle as we continue our fleet management program with that. Parking lots, capital asset plan maintains our asphalt here in the district. Just so happens, though, that the parking lots that are in need of attention are at Lebanon High School as well. And then finally, some building envelope work throughout the district. So, with that being said, we'll move on to financial implications. The overall total project budget is $65 million. We have to announce that. I call it a high water mark often. The project resolution says that no more than $8 million will be levied in any given year for these payments. And then tax rate implications, the tax rate is expected to not increase at all with this. It will be where it is this year or lower moving forward. And that has to do with existing debt that is being retired. So with that, Mr. Parks, I'll turn it over to you for any public comment, and then we will come back for consideration of resolutions.
All right. We will open it up for comments from the public. Seeing that nobody is moving forward very quickly. I take it that we do not have any comments. We'll just turn that over to the resolutions.
Perfect. So in your board packet this evening, the first of four resolutions titled Exhibit A, which is the project resolution. This particular resolution lays out the project description, estimated cost of the project, and how it will be paid for. So appreciate board's consideration of Exhibit A, the project resolution.
Do we have a motion to adopt or to, adopt project resolution Exhibit A?
Motion.
Mrs. Hutchison, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Clauser, I have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is Exhibit B, preliminary determination resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. The preliminary determination resolution declares our intent to issue bonds. It states that we have adhered to the legal requirements, and it also explains the financial parameters of the financing.
All right. That will entertain a motion for the adoption of preliminary determination resolution, Exhibit B.
I'll move for adoption.
Mr. Clauser, do we have a second?
Second.
Is that Mr. Bertrand? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is Exhibit C, preliminary bond resolution.
So the preliminary bond resolution is the specifics of the financing for this specific year. As the board recalls, I just a few moments ago announced the overall project budget of $65 million. The expenditure of $65 million and the timeline for these projects is such that with the interest rates where they are, it doesn't make good, prudent, and financial sense to issue all $65 million of the bonds, as it would take approximately 30 months to expend that. And so much like we have earlier, and in fact later on this evening, we'll go through some additional cash flow issuances. The preliminary bond resolution for this year states that at most $15 million will be executed in 2024. So the preliminary bond resolution states the nature of the 2024 financing that is specifically associated with this project, and that we will give timely notice when the determination to issue these bonds has been made.
All right, thank you. With that, do we have a motion to adopt preliminary bond resolution Exhibit C?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Clauser. Do you have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hendricks. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is Exhibit D, declaration of official intent to reimburse expenditures.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. This resolution acknowledges the fact that to get to where we are tonight, the school corporation has been expected to incur some expenditures from architects, design teams, things like that, and that the school corporation will reimburse itself from the proceeds of these bonds once closed.
All right. So do we have a motion to adopt declaration of official intent to reimburse expenditures?
Motion.
Mrs. Hutchison. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Bertrand. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. With that, we will close this hearing and move on to the regular meeting. Next, we have approval of minutes for the June 17th regular meeting and the July 9th public hearing and special session. That information is included in your background notes. Do we have a motion to adopt?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Hendricks. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Clauser. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is superintendent's announcements and celebrations.
Thank
Dr.
you, Mr.
Millman.
Parks. I have several. I had very few last meeting. I have several this evening to share with you. First, I just wanted to take a moment in this month prior to school starting to bring to light the work that our custodial maintenance and buildings and grounds has been doing, not just this summer, but throughout the past year. It's tough to get a school district ready for the school year, but it's even tougher when almost every campus is under construction. And not only are they required to do their normal prep work and deep clean work in the summer, but just today, and we'll talk about this later in our project updates, but we were in the process of punching out some classrooms to turn those over to the schools so we could use them at Harney Elementary, and our maintenance and custodial staff were there putting tape on the wall and marking the nail pops and the things that needed to be repaired prior to that. So I just wanted to bring to light their extraordinary effort in prepping our building and the work that they do. And then likewise, our food service department has had a heavy lift as well through these construction projects, satelliting lunches throughout the school year to new locations. That will be happening at the middle school. See Mr. Dunshee out there this evening as we've been renovating the kitchen here at the high school to make that happen, and onboarding staff, recruiting staff, but then also getting those kitchens ready. And if you saw the Harney kitchen today under construction, you wonder if it's going to be ready, but it will be. Likewise, I just wanted to give them our thanks as well. Wanted to share also that we've been receiving applications for the second year of our Tiger Community Ambassadors program, and we have had a very robust group of applicants, and interest is high, which makes us feel very good that folks are interested in what's going on in the district. So we'll be sending out some notifications here within the next week to the next year's class, and just wanted to thank our community for that and for their interest. I think the board's aware that last year I spent Friday mornings going throughout the district, meeting with the staff at buildings, just listening to their needs, just any topic. I didn't have a topic when I sat down with them, just give them an opportunity to talk to me about anything that was on their mind. I'm happy to share that we're addressing two of the items, or a theme that really came out of last year to begin this school year. The first is, I'm happy to share that we are one of 5 school districts in Indiana that received the Comprehensive Mental Health Framework Grant. Senate Bill 1 last year has allocated $100 million from the Department of Mental Health and Addiction through the state of Indiana. So this is not just an emphasis at the school level, this is an emphasis at the state level to address mental health in the state of Indiana. And that department, as well as the Indiana Family and Social Services, has teamed up with Butler University to offer a series of grants. And we've received a $124,400 grant for this next calendar year. And we're going to be leveraging that to support our multi-tiered system of supports, which will give our teachers and administrators tools to help our students when they start to exhibit academic delays, but as well as behavioral issues, things that might be triggered by mental health issues as well, and to give us some tools to do that. One thing I'm proud of in this grant as well, and I emphasized to our grant partner, was that we're concerned about staff mental health. And so a significant portion of this grant is dedicated to taking care of our people and our staff. So that will be part of it as well. And then I'll share with you in a moment that we, our student services coordinator in that work as well, that will support her. And then we're also going to be reviewing and revising our crisis intervention plan. It's in need of some streamlining and right-sizing our professional development for our staff to support students that may be in crisis. Also, along those lines, I'm very pleased to say that we have filled a new position of student services coordinator for the district, and we're very fortunate to add Mrs. Deanna Nybarger to our staff for that purpose. Deanna has been a life skills special education teacher, classroom teacher, and she is an expert, I don't use that term lightly, in applied educational neuroscience. The last 2 years, I believe, 2 or 3 years, she's served as a research specialist for Indiana University and the Center for Educational and Lifelong Learning. I didn't hold that against her. She's IU. We still hired her. But she's done a lot of work. She's published in the area of educational neuroscience. She is a sought-after professional development provider, facilitator throughout the state of Indiana. And we were able to coax her away from Indiana University and serve our staff and students to give them practices that they can use, actionable practices in their classroom. So we are super excited to add her to our team. And then on top of that, I just have some upcoming dates to share with you in closing. We're continuing student registration this week. Encourage everyone to make sure you take advantage of that. I'm going to look out at Lexi. I think I got this right. The in-person is this Thursday, July 18th, pretty much all day. 12 to 8 p.m. at your school location, right? At your school location. So let's make sure that we get all the registration taken care of there as well. Our first staff day will be Thursday, August 1st. Our first student day is Tuesday, August 6th. I invite the school board to reach out to Lexi. She's getting lists together for groups and community groups. And if you're part of any community groups, to greet our students on the first day. It's becoming a great tradition at all of our schools. So I encourage folks to take care of that as well. And then mark your calendars for August 28th. That will be this year's State of the Schools program right here in the Wells Center. That's a breakfast event. We try to get it in under an hour and a half. Get folks in, so just mark that calendar and invite the board to attend that as well. And that's all I have for my announcements this evening.
All right. What date was that for the state of the
August 28th.
August 28th. Great. All right. Item number 9, informational items. Back to you, Dr. Millman, on discussion of corporation teacher evaluation plan.
Yes, this is a statutory requirement in the state of Indiana that requires us to discuss the previous year's teacher evaluation results. So this is the annual conversation around that and offer any questions. The teacher evaluation plan is unchanged for the upcoming school year, the one that we followed for the last several years. The teacher rubric, the scoring within that rubric, the final evaluation scores are all the same moving into 2024. So the results of that from 23-24 were, out of the 266 certified staff evaluated, there were 127 effective. That would be 47.74% if you're keeping score. 133 highly effective, which is 50% of our staff. 5 improvement necessary, just shy of 2%, and 1 ineffective, which is under 0.5% of the staff. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have about that, but that is just, again, a requirement by August 1st that we share that information with the board annually.
Any questions? Thank you so much. Next, we have first reading of policy updates.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Parks. I'm going to spend some time this evening on some of the policies this evening, as there's been some that are updated a little bit more substantially, and then I think there's been some discussion as well about them. The first one is in the bylaws, and it's really just in a definitions section, 2 places. One, defining what a personal communication device is, and that plays into an upcoming policy I'll talk about in a moment. And then also outlining really what's in statute, but I think it is helpful to have it in policy, in the forward-facing policy, of defining a meeting and what is the definition of a meeting. I think it's good to actually have that. Applaud Neola for putting that in there. And then also an executive session as well, defining some parameters that the board has at their disposal. So that one is just really in the definitions and updating some of them from Neola. I mentioned Neola. That is our policy development partner. It's a subscription that the district utilizes. Neola monitors state legislation in the various states that they support with their policy. Neola is an acronym. Please don't ask me what those letters stand for right now. I did have them memorized at one time. But they follow our state legislation and then adjust policies as necessary. I mentioned that as when you read our policy manual, there's a adopted date and a revised date on our policies at the top of each policy. Those are Neola timestamps. So that speaks to when Neola last updated these policies. And as you can see, the one I'm going to talk about next, which is 5136, personal communication devices, apparently has not needed much revision. And it's come to the fore because our state legislators have identified this as a priority. And so I think this brought it to light, and then Neola came in and made some tweaks and adjustments to the policy for boards to consider. Our current policy meets the requirement of the new law. The new law essentially states that school districts must have a policy in place regarding personal communication devices of students during instructional time. We had that policy. Most, if not all, school districts already had that policy in place. However, it's clear through that legislative action that there's an expectation that there be some emphasis placed on that in public schools across Indiana. That's been the case across the United States. I attended a national superintendent's conference earlier this past school year, and there were quite a few presentations on this topic. There were vendor demonstrations on this topic. So this is something that's been being addressed across the country, not just in Indiana. So this policy just kind of really defines a little bit more clearly what instructional time means, and we had some options within this policy, and you can see that in the first reading what we're suggesting is that instructional time include class time. So students would still be able to use their devices in passing periods, lunch periods, to and from school, etc., but during the class time is when so it outlines it a little bit more clearly for the families. The procedure around that and the practices around that will be addressed in student handbooks, which you've already approved, which includes the practices, as well as administrative guidelines. Those are more nimble. Obviously, those are the procedures that go along with the policy. So that is not addressed in the actual formal board policy. Our grades 6 through 12, looking out at Mr. Dunshee again, our plan is for our students to place their devices in a secured, it's a good word for them, Mr. Dunshee. It's like an old calculator
Pouches.
holder
Yeah.
at a space in the room. And that way there's a lack of temptation at that moment to do that. Our students are able to access technology through their school-issued iPad devices, which we have for each student in the district as well. A little bit harder to put the iPad in your pocket and or under the desk. So that I think will be helpful in that practice. So I believe the communications have maybe started from the schools, kind of giving the parents a heads up on that so they can prepare their students for that. But that's handled through our handbook and through our administrative guidelines. That's not formalized in the board policy. So I did want to spend some time on that. I also wanted to point out that I did discover before the board meeting this evening that I believe it's on page 3 of your first reading, I left unchecked some options in the paragraph in the newer or the black font language, which is the third paragraph down. And our current policy will be really followed there, which is mostly may provisions. It's hard to lock a teacher or an administrator into, every time a violation of this policy takes place, you shall do this. There's definitely nuances to every situation. That section basically says that it could be taken from, by the teacher and then returned to the student after the class period. It could be taken by the teacher and put in a secure location and then taken to the main office for the student to pick up at the end of the day. And then in repeated offenses, which will follow the student handbook, it could result in the parent coming to retrieve the phone, or it's going to be a phone in most cases, right? So I just wanted to point that out, that we'll clean that up by second reading, and if you have any questions or feedback, certainly that would be the time to do it between first and second reading. So that was a lot on that policy, but it's been a topic throughout the state. It's been a topic throughout many states. So we're just aligning our policy with our practice.
And there are exceptions to these
Yes.
when necessary for specific reasons, IEPs or anything
That's
that is
correct.
necessary.
That's
There's
correct.
provisions written in this and would be in the handbook as well.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it's in the law. So if it's written into a student's individual education plan, their IEP, student might have a medical reason for it. We have students who check insulin levels, for example, and things like that, monitor medical situations. And even in situations where there might be family medical as well, that's in the policy as well. They work with the administration on those situations. So absolutely, yeah. translation perhaps, when it's more portable to do in group work rather than
Then a-
moving the
an
iPad
iPad.
or the computer around. Yeah, so
Absolutely.
we would certainly work with them. So thank you for bringing that up as well. The next policy is a attendance policy. That's another emphasis of the legislature this year. It's changed the definition of what a habitual truant is. So this policy reflects that new language. The piece that really is the most important from a board policy standpoint is the new law states that the board policy must address whether a student who has met the definition of a habitual truant, which has been lowered, that bar's been lowered, 5 unexcused absences in a 10-week period is now the new definition in statute of that. Whether that student can or cannot participate in and extracurricular activities if they've met that threshold. The policy I've put before the board this evening to consider is a may provision, not to skirt the issue, but also in policy, in the law, if a student meets that definition of truant, we're required to develop an attendance plan for that student. So this policy reflects that a student may be able to participate in or extracurricular activities according to his or her attendance plan, which is jointly come about with the parent, teacher, and administration. I, from experience in the classroom and as a school administrator, know that oftentimes our students attend school because of the and extracurricular activities. And so there's that's a reason for them to be here. And so that I'm going to leave that to the parents and the administration and the counselors to determine what's the right mix there of that. So I'm bringing that to your attention. And then there was also some revisions in the law regarding students leaving school to attend religious education off campus. And so this new policy reflects the new law regarding the number of minutes it's allowable, et cetera. And the last two policies, the wellness policy, as you can see, has been pretty much gutted from the original policy from Neola. Just reflects a lot of our requirements. They have a wellness committee, who's on the committee, what it needs to address. There's some language in there about what food can be served during the school day, what food cannot be served during the school day, et cetera. And then our food service program just brings up to date things such as free and reduced lunch policies regarding students and a la carte items, the free and reduced, what they're to be served is like what used to be called the type A lunch. It's probably not called that now, but it doesn't include a la carte items, chips, things like that throughout the thing. And it was also for the student who would run their account into the negative. Similar thing where they would not be allowed to charge their account into the negative for a la carte items. They'd be able to charge for the lunch that meets all the nutritional requirements by the state. So that's the updating for that. More than probably I've talked about with policies in the past, but there's some new and important changes on the horizon here for all of us. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Dr. Milliman, does that wellness committee already exist? Will you be putting it together?
It does, and we're actually going to be reconstituting it. Mr. Martin, as Director of Operations, is in charge of that, so I think he's in the process of putting that group together. No, the wellness policy.
Committee.
Does it exist, and are you?
I am with Stuart on that, sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
And does that involve, in terms of the nutrition plan and the wellness policy, does that include information regarding allergens and things like that with how they're treated in terms of what we're serving?
We did not get into details of that level with the wellness policy at all. We do have policies that address that in other areas, especially the medical side. The nurses drive that a lot.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. There's chronic illness, allergens, things like that that are part of that student medical plan.
It's a constant battle with this room is being a free situation.
Right.
Any other questions? All right. Next, we have school construction and renovation update.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. I'll invite Mr. Chris Kingery from Gibraltar up to the podium while he makes his way up here. He will be presenting to the board tonight plans for Hattie B. Stokes. Obviously, a lot of activity at Perry Worth, Harney, construction of a new central. Hattie B. Stokes also is to receive attention as part of our 2022 referendum campaign, just due to the immediate needs at Perry Worth and Harney, and the nature or the fact that Hattie B. Stokes is approximately 21 years old, relatively young in terms of Perry Worth and Harney. Hattie B. Stokes was designed to be attended to once those schools were well underway and on their way towards completion. So, Mr. Kingery, please update us on the goings-on at Stokes.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you again. A lot of exciting things happening in Lebanon, clearly, and we're excited to be a part of it. So tonight is exciting because it is full circle from that original elementary benchmark that we created in 2021 to implement at each of the schools. So tonight just wanted to bring forward just a design update to make sure that you understand the original purpose behind the work that we were doing at Stokes, and then a timeline and schedule moving forward. As Mr. Dennis mentioned, 21 years old, very soon it will no longer be known as the new elementary school in Lebanon, which I'm sure many refer to it as that. So there are some existing conditions that we reviewed that we'll go over this evening so that you have a full understanding of where we're heading for Hattie B. Stokes. I did have an opportunity, Mr. Dennis and I, to meet with the new Principal Walters to make sure that, you know, welcome to your new job, and here's a hard hat, because there's going to be construction happening at your school over time. But she's very excited about the work that was happening and made her part of the process. So just long-term considerations as we originally set out to fully implement at each of the elementary schools. Want to make sure that there's equity across all schools. Also making sure that increased enrollment capacity, that you are going to be able to have some comfort at your elementary level for years to come, and also have a long-term plan for Stokes if you were needing to grow at that school as well. Then aligning each of the elementary schools with that programming benchmark that we put in place, which we'll talk about. And then strategic updates. You know, there's lots of finishes there that are working at Hattie B. Stokes. We wanted to recognize that, but there's some also after 21 years, as you can imagine, some things that need to be updated, and we want to make sure that all comes in together. And then some mechanical, electrical, plumbing updates, which we'll talk about. And then that last thing is, we've said from the very beginning, same opportunity and experience, no matter your address in Lebanon schools. So existing conditions, I'm pretty familiar with Hattie B. Stokes, I'm sure you are at this point. What we have done is taken our 2020, 2021 facility assessments to make sure that we account for, after 21 years, all those things that are still working and in good condition, but those things that are end of life, if you're in there doing a project, you want to make sure that you address those. So there's some mechanical, electrical, plumbing things that will happen at Stokes that may not be very exciting to staff, but still necessary to happen. Moving into program changes, which is going to be a little bit more exciting for staff, is that making sure that if a child moves from Perry Worth and moves to Hattie B. Stokes, they're going to still have the same programming and opportunities at that school. So updating the main office to meet student needs, looking for 2 additional student support flex spaces. As you are well aware, all the outside partners that provide support for students inside the school, we want to make sure that they have some private spaces to be able to deliver those services. Also a new STEM classroom, and then maximizing existing square footage for program updates. So our goal was to make sure that we can implement this within the square footage that you have at Hattie B. Stokes. And then also master plan for future growth down the road. I mean, the secret's out. More people are moving here, and I see dirt moving every day on new neighborhoods, that as you move forward, that there is a long-term plan to be able to grow at that school. And ultimately be a long-term investment in your community. The last thing where you can see that will probably be most felt by public as they're going through, I color-coded this to know if it's red, it's kind of heavy. If it is orange, it's kind of medium construction. And then if it is that blue color, that means just a light refresh of certain key areas in the building. So refreshing the classroom and corridors, support areas. Also refreshing some student support flex spaces that are already there to make sure they meet the needs for what staff needs to deliver today. Enhancing that lobby in the office reception area as well. And then updating the cafeteria with new finishes. The brick is staying. There's lots of beautiful brick there, but we're trying to find ways to make sure that we bring that brick out with some new finishes in that space. And then finally, other intentional refresh updates to fit that kind of long-term vision, so it feels like a new building on the inside, and they get that kind of restart that all the other schools are getting. From a project milestone schedule, we are moving forward with construction documents as we speak, and then you can kind of see where the timeline moving forward. Moving forward to the construction beginning, we have that to be determined. We're going to rely on our partners with Meyer Najam to determine the best time in the market for doing that construction without having that least amount of impact on teaching and learning. And so we'll be having conversations with them about the strategy of the timing of that. As far as next steps for us to carry this forward, we do have a design meeting tomorrow to make sure that we're aligning that scope with the budget that's set forth. We also have a finish meeting that's scheduled for July 30th. So again, an opportunity to pick some finishes and also to make sure that as you go to each of the elementary schools, you know you're in Lebanon, but they also still have their own kind of unique, expression. And then one thing, set forth by Lebanon Schools is making sure that we have finishes that have that staying power, so it's something that's going to be able to replace. It's going to be durable and last for a long time. And then plan on bringing back to the school board on August 20th, so that those areas that are getting some pretty heavy construction, you can get some ideas of what that's going to look like, what that's going to feel like for students and parents that are visiting. And then final is at some point this fall, we plan on returning to visit with the staff at Hattie B. Stokes so that they have a clear understanding of the project, timelines, how it impacts them, and all of those details to make sure they're prepared for what's coming. That's all I have this evening. Any questions?
Does it appear that these will all be done by the same time the other schools, or no? It will be later.
So Stokes will be coming in last. Again, once we finalize scope, we'll have an idea of how quickly we could move through this. I hate to make any promises,
Yeah.
but perhaps as early as December of 2025, or as late as the summer of 2026 to be completely done. But
I mentioned as Mr. Kingery was talking about the refresh of the lobby in that center corridor of the building, I was remiss, could have done it in my announcements. I shared that I would share again this evening that we feel like we found a home for the wagon that currently exists there with Equiventures, which is a equine therapy group near Kokomo to help students with special needs. And but did want to give our community an opportunity to reach out to me this week if possible, if there's interest in that. Otherwise, we're going to begin executing some of that transfer to them and help out the kids there. So,
Sounds like an excellent repurpose too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have consent agenda, staff matters, classified, certified, and ECA. Dr. Millman.
yes, thank you, Mr. Parks. Under 10A this evening, asking for approval of new hire number 597. Under our certified staff this evening, a corrected salary from the original approval, number 194, which is correct according to the salary agreement, or the employment agreement rather, with that individual. New hires 195 through 199, and resignations 200 through 202. And in ECA this evening, asking for approval of new hires 592 through 596.
Thank you, Dr. Millman. With that, we'll, is there a motion to adopt or to approve these staff matters as read?
I'll move to approve as read.
Mr. Clauser. Do you have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hutchison. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I'll pause and say that with that approval of the board, the board has approved the appointment of our new Lebanon High School baseball coach, Mr. Riley Benner. He's here this evening with Mr. Levine. We don't get to talk about hiring new baseball coaches around Lebanon very often. So this is a special treat. So if you'd like to introduce him and Coach, maybe if you'd like to come forward, we got to get you on camera and on the microphone if you're going to say something. So invite you to come on up and meet the board and make all these promises you're going to make us, right?
Before I introduce Mr. Benner, I just wanted to say that it was a long process as we interviewed several candidates, and we did have a panel put together to help with the process. And I want to thank Matt Schaller, who's here this evening to show his support, was one of the individuals that most of you know from the community and from the baseball background that was on the panel to help make this decision. So I thank him and all the other members that you're aware of. But I'm extremely excited to have the opportunity to introduce to you Mr. Riley Benner. He has promised me he will not only win state championships, but be here 50 years, not 25 years. No, we're excited to have him. Comes with a great deal of knowledge. He lives, eats, sleeps, and breathes baseball from his family on. And I'll give him the opportunity to speak and introduce who he brought with him today.
Thank you, Phil. As he mentioned, my name is Riley Benner. Nice to meet you guys. Can't tell you how excited I am to be here. You know, I thought about like you mentioned, baseball is a big part of my life, and I'm just so thankful to have my wife, Jessie, and my daughter, Macy, here with me. I should have practiced this before I came up here, but super excited to be here. Like you said, live, eat, sleep, breathe baseball. It's been a dream of mine to be a head baseball coach and to get to do that in a place where, like you said, Coach Cosgrave being here 25 years, high standard to come in and uphold, and I'm excited to pour everything into the program here, into the student athletes, and then to become a member of this community. I can't thank you guys enough for the opportunity to be here. And to Phil, I thank you to you for the whole process, everything being great. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. Congrats.
Expect to see the, yes.
Full Tiger gear for the entire
I was
family,
going to say, we need to
right?
get the world's smallest bucket hat for that.
Yes.
Right there. LT bucket hat. Send Mr. Dennis a bill.
Welcome. Next, we have consent agenda business matters. Mr. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. As always, financial update in the board packet this evening. This is a particularly important benchmark as this includes 50% of the year. And so at this point, on our landscape item, our month-over-month fund balance with the projection line at the top, obviously early on in the year, the future months are all projections, and obviously July through December are still just projections on this. But with the revenue that we receive in June, that starts to bring into focus some more actuals and items like this. And so I guess trying to convey to the board that this is becoming obviously more and more of a reality as the majority of the months being projections are turning into actuals. And then furthermore, on our portrait version here with our pie charts and our individual object amounts, again, halfway through the year, we roughly should be, depending on the timing of some things, but for all intents and purposes, we should approximately be halfway through our budget on our expenditures when you look at what's been spent year to date. And so, as always, we'll read the claims after this, but happy to answer any questions regarding the financial update before reading the claims.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right. So again, prior to reading the claims here, the June claims are an important month. Our bond payments are in here, and so obviously the number I'm about to read sounds staggering. This happens twice a year. Bond payments get paid twice a year, and then as always, construction payments are ongoing. This is sort of inflated these numbers ever since our construction projects started. I will remind the board that really two different places are paying for our construction projects right now. We, as a school corporation, received money, but then also the building corporation, which is a mechanism that Indiana forces schools to adhere to and establish, but that money is with a trustee bank, and so our payments each month, some come from LCSC and some come from the building corporation, but obviously the claims that are paid by LCSC are read in here as well. And so I say all that. That's, if we've been reading the claims for the past month, those construction payments have been placed in there. But if you've driven by the middle school, all the money that is paying for middle school right now is LCSC money, not building corp money. And so if you see the amount of dirt that's been moved at the middle school, we have started receiving some significant is the proper word, pay applications from those site contractors that are performing work on that. So with that, asking for the board's approval of two payrolls in the amount of $1,984,746.72. Claims in the amount of $12,025,763.21 for a total of $14,010,509.93. Appreciate it.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the claims and payroll as read by Mr. Dennis?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Bertrand. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Clauser. A motion and a second. Any discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. With that, before we go into the comments from the public, I wanted to make a motion myself to add a couple agenda items. I think all of us, Dr. Millman, let all of us know individually of these items, but we just wanted to put it up before the comments from the public, just in case. I would like to add items 13, is it J? J and K. 13J would be a request approval to submit confirmation of exemption from Indiana Code 20-26 7.1. And then also item 13K would be request of ratification of limited license agreement with the City of Lebanon for Fordyce Road. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second.
Mr. Hendricks, we have a motion and a second. Do any further discussion? All in favor of adding these to the agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Those will be added. Now we go to comments from the public. Do we have anybody signed up? Hearing none. We will move on to action items. Item 13A is request approval of change orders. Mr. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. A few this month that I want to dedicate specific attention to, mainly due to the size of them. The first is the final capture of missed scope for AV equipment, this time at Central Elementary. Again, it was within the technology budget. It was just misscoped, and now we have to obviously add it to the contract. What I want to speak about, though, is at transportation. There's a rather large almost $336,000 change order. That was not a surprise. Coming out of TAC hearings with the city on how we would address specifically the water utility at transportation, the city requested that a water loop be added because transportation is at the end of a water main. When you're at the end of a water main, water service, pressure, things like that are diminished at that point, and actually creating a loop provides better service for us, and especially with diesel being stored on site and the need for potential fire suppression, having reliable water utility is important. And so when we became aware of that, as is the nature of the timing of these projects, the transportation facility had already been bid and awarded. And so at that point, since this also benefits the middle school, the strategy there would be to request it in change order pricing from the site contractor that was already under contract at the transportation. We also received bid day pricing by placing it in the middle school bid package as well. The way that worked out is change order pricing from the transportation site contractor was more lucrative is the
Fa-
wrong word.
favorable.
Favorable is the
Yeah.
correct word, than what the bid day pricing was with the middle school on bid day. So again, that's why we have to add this as a change order now. If it was more favorable at the middle school, it would have been read as part of the site contract when we approved the middle school contracts. And so again, that one definitely jumps off the page absent context. And so I wanted to give that context. This was always a part of the budget. It's just the strategy of how it worked out ended up being more favorable with the site contractor at Transportation. They were already under contract, so we have to add that to their contract via change order.
Any questions? Thank you. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the change orders as provided in your background notes?
All motion.
Mr. Hendricks, do we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hutchison. Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval rental agreement with Center Township Fire Department.
Speaking of transportation and of course, the utility of the new facility, there is nowhere near enough parking spots on our site at the current transportation facility for our employees to park. Right next door to that is Center Township's Fire Department. We have been parking there for over a decade, and it is agreeable and right that we provide rent for that. That's wear and tear. That's their facility that they've provided for our utilization. And so in front of you tonight is a resolution that we've prepared authorizing a rental payment to get us through the end of this school year, occupying 15 parking spots at Center Township Fire Department. And then obviously when we move to the new transportation facility, that will no longer be needed. So that's why the termination date of this is the end of school year, school year 24-25.
So do we have a motion to approve the rental agreement with Center Township Fire Department?
I'll move.
Mr. Klausner, do we have a second?
Second.
Is that Mr. Bertrand? Okay. Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is resolution approving ninth supplement to master contract disclosure undertaking middle school transportation projects and 24 lease bonds. Mr. Dennis.
And that is a lot
That's
of
a mouthful.
legalese
That is a mouthful.
for additional cash flow for projects that we have going on. So earlier this evening, we had a preliminary determination hearing for an authorization up to $65 million. We talked about, at most this year, we'd be executing $15 million. So the next two action items fall in line in similarity with that with previous authorizations we've had, the 2023 authorization for middle school and transportation, and then the 2022 referendum. And so for the exact same reasons that I shared earlier, where we only issue the money, the debt that we need to get us to the next calendar year because interest rates are so high right now. We're not going to issue a lot of money, pay a lot of interest rates, high interest up front. So this first action item here, 13C, is simply the board action that authorizes the next issuance of cash flow to get us to this time next year for middle school and transportation. So that will be a $55 million sale to provide us with cash flow to make construction payments, design payments on the middle school and transportation to get us to this time next year. So that long sentence that Mr. Parks just read is the legal term that gives the board granting authorization and desires to receive more cash flow, essentially. And this was the 2023 authorization, so the legal steps that we went through last year. So no legal steps to go through for this. This is simply the board declaration that next bit of cash flow is coming through.
All right. So do we have a motion to adopt this resolution authorizing additional bond proceeds for middle school transportation and 24 lease bonds?
Motion.
Ms. Hutchison, do you have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Clauser. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval resolutions for referendum approved projects and the 24 unlimited lease bonds. I'll let you explain exhibits A and B, for approving amendment to lease and approving an 8th supplement to the master disclosure.
Yes, so this will now take us back to our 2022 referendum. The reason that there are two and not one, because the previous action item just had the one action to take place, is there's actually two different types of payments as these projects are going on. There's one that's titled rent during renovation. So as you're repaying bondholders, when you do not yet have a completed project, those types of payments are called rent during renovation. Once the project is completed, those payments are technically called lease payments at that point. So when the master disclosure was originally drafted for the referendum, we weren't completely sure yet when substantial completion would be finished. Turns out now that the project has been fleshed out, phasing has been finalized, we are simply stating to our bondholders now that we have an additional 6 months of rent during renovation. The projects are taking longer to complete. And so this is really a transparency issue with our bondholders. It's to stay transparent. Obviously, it's the same amount of money whether it's a rent during renovation payment or a lease payment. So the first one, being the amendment to the lease, is simply amending the lease to state that it's additional 6 months of rent during renovation rather than lease payments, since we don't have substantial completion. So just amending this, no financial terms being amended, purely substantial completion date.
Ultimately, it's letting them know that we're moving along and then let them know when it's complete. too,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Since
Ultimately,
since they're holding security
they're
on
holding
the,
the,
yeah.
yes, all right. So do we have a motion to approve these resolutions as read?
All motion.
Mr. Hendricks, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Bertrand, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is a request approval of renewed teacher appreciation grant policy.
Can I get a motion on Exhibit B as well?
Oh, okay.
Yep. So this is identical to the
Okay.
one from the 2023s.
All
This
right.
is the
Do
last
we-
bit of cash
That
flow.
was for Exhibit A. Do
Yep.
we have a motion to adopt Exhibit B, the resolution approving the 8th supplement to Master Continuing Disclosure Undertaking?
I'll move to adopt Exhibit B.
Mr. Clauser, do we have a second? Mrs. Hutchison? A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Sorry about that.
Nope.
Now, on to item E, request approval of renewed teacher appreciation.
No worries. Thank you, Mr. Parks. This is an annual item as well in front of the board. We would normally take 2 readings for policy. However, when the policy is unchanged, there's really no need to do that, but we do need to submit to the state of Indiana the adoption date of the board on this policy. Each year, the state of Indiana determines a set amount of dollars to be distributed to teachers across the state of Indiana. It's called a Teacher Appreciation Grant. And in order for us to receive that, we must certify through board action that we understand that at minimum, teachers who were rated highly effective, as I just read earlier in the board meeting, receive at minimum 25% more than the effective teachers. The designation of improvement necessary and ineffective are not eligible for additional compensation. So we have stayed at that minimum requirement since the inception of this requirement. So respectfully ask the board's approval of this policy so that we can get some money for our teachers in December.
In essence, this is a second reading of the policy, kind of, yeah.
It's
Readoption,
Yeah,
right?
it's probably
It was
the-
same policy.
10th reading of it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
of each year's annual adoption, yes.
Yeah. So do we have a motion to approve the renewed teacher appreciation grant policy?
All motion.
Mr. Bertrand, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hendricks. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of 23-24 Hattie B. Stokes Jumpstart staff.
Yes, this year it is a jump start at Hattie B. Stokes, as all other locations are unavailable at this point for the most part. So this is to allow our K students to get that jump start at Hattie B. Stokes. This is funded through summer school. We submit each year to the state of Indiana for reimbursement for summer school expenditures. That reimbursement percentage of our actual cost has declined over the last several years to now an all-time low last year of, Dr. Ottinger,
64%. We're projected to get 46% this year.
so 64% last year. We're projected to get 46% of our dollars back that we spend from the state of Indiana. bit disappointing as a sidebar, coming out of the pandemic, et cetera, where we really needed some of those dollars, we think, in the summer to help our students. But that's a discussion for another time with the board. So that shortfall, if you will, from reimbursement will come from the education fund as part of the commitment. We revisit this topic every year. We try to right-size it for participation. Sometimes there might be multiple sites, sometimes there may be one site, depending on the year. So respectfully request approval of funding for Jumpstart.
All right. With that, do we have a motion to approve the funding for Jumpstart?
Motion.
Mrs. Hutchinson, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Clauser?
Yep.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is request approval of LMS Athletic Handbook. You want us to move you to the bottom so you can just stay here the whole time?
I appreciate that. I like a good meeting. Most of the handbook changes that you can see in your notes there say at the very end of them that mirrors the policy from LHS. We're trying to do as much as we can, even though we are not bound by any IHSA guidelines as a middle school. We can do whatever we want. We can have our own policies. It just makes sense because the IHSA has put a lot of thought into why they do what they do. So things like being in attendance for the last half of the school day. That's one of the main things you'll see on there is the attendance policy. So we are going to now make our athletes be there for the second half of the day. So if you check out and say, I have a headache, I'm going to go home at midday, well, you're not going to go to practice that night. We didn't have that in the past. The high schools always had that policy. We added baseball and softball. Obviously, having middle school baseball and softball will be new for us this next year. So we added some language in there on that. Cell phones mirrors LHS policy. Computer and technology usage mirrors LHS policy. We did put some general information because a lot of times it's the first time a student might be cut from a sport. Parents are sometimes surprised. I thought everybody got to play sports in middle school. You can do whatever you want. Well, we don't have 400 uniforms to do every single sport. So there are occasions where we have to cut. So we put that in there so the parents were aware. And then just the physical part of it, again, we don't have to follow the IHSA guidelines, but it's best practices to have a kid with a physical when they're going to do an athletic event. We didn't specifically have that laid out, so we have that in our handbook as well. And travel, we had a couple of instances with travel on buses that didn't go so well, so we're putting some language in there on consequences from travel to and from sporting events, just so they know that that is still an extension of the school day, even though it always has been, we specifically put it in the language. So those are kind of the changes in there, nothing major, but just some things we thought we need updated.
Good preparation for high school as they move in.
Yes.
Expectations, so. With that, do we have a motion to approve the athletic handbook, LMS Athletic Handbook?
All motion.
Mr. Hendricks? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Bertrand? We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, item H is a request approval of 24-25 renewal contract for YSPP. Mr.
Good
Martin?
evening. This is I don't know if I have a mic or not, but this is an annual renewal for the YSPP. This year 2 classrooms rather than 3, and a slight increase in the daily, monthly, or daily, weekly cost passed on. And other than that, the contract remains the same. Mr. Fettig, I wanted to say Mr. Pascal. Mr. Fettig is here if you have some any other questions or inquiries about anything that goes on with YSPP?
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the 24-25 renewal contract for YSPP?
I'll move to approve.
Mr. Clauser. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hutcherson. A motion and a second. Any discussion?
So did you say we're dropping a classroom?
Down by 1 classroom, yes.
What's the basis for that, just out of curiosity?
We didn't choose.
We just
Do
need
you
it.
want
Okay.
to?
Basically, with all the renovations and constructions, there was some needs for DPK to move to Stokes and so on. So we decided to go ahead and lower our numbers. It was going to be hard. We were offered by the school to go to Army, but that was going to be a bit difficult to try to maneuver around.
Gotcha.
So I'm happy to say that the classes are full. We do have an outside program, pre-K, but we filled YSPP first. And so business is as usual. And that spot's opened up rather than taking them to Growing Minds, which is our other program. We'll put them in YSPP. both programs they differ a little bit in what we do there, but they both are mirrored as far as acclimating our students to the Lebanon Education Corporation.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
As a mom who used BASE for my 2 kids, I think it's a great program.
We have a motion and a second. Any other? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a request approval of 24-25 renewal of contract for BASE.
In fulfillment of state requirement for Latch Key program, we use, or we contract with Mental Health America Boone County to provide the base services. K-6, technically, we have nobody accepts or goes into the program at 6th grade, but we do have facilitation to make that happen if it happened. It was requested, but that is the base contract. It's again a yearly agreement.
All right. With that, do we have a motion to approve the renewal contract for BASE?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Hendricks, do we have a second?
Second.
Ooh,
It's a tie.
I got it. Mr. Clauser got it. We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have item J, and that is in regards to the request for confirmation of exemption.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Parks. I've been working with Mr. Franzen and Par Ritchie on this for several months, and received it after we'd posted, obviously, the agenda, but wanted to get the board's ratification of this letter to go to Secretary of Education Jenner at the Department of Education. There's been several tweaks to the law on the books that requires schools that take buildings offline for their current education of, in our case, Central Elementary K-5. We've talked about this quite often, of offering that facility to a charter school or a post-secondary institution for the amount of $1. This goes back to our 2022 referendum conversation with the community, and we were very clear that our intended purpose for Central Elementary, as Mr. Dennis pointed out earlier, was for a pre-K program, potentially our developmental preschool program as well at that center. So we believe that that purpose, as well as converting that to administrative office space, and it is in statute, are 2 acceptable reasons for an exception to this rule. As laws often are, there's some up for interpretation, if you will, or some disconnect in it, in that it states that when you bring the school offline, you have 30 days to share that it is no longer in use. The board has got the ball rolling on several $1 million worth of renovations for this facility. So this letter is really quite early in the process, earlier than required in statute, but it's suggested from my office through your board attorney to be as proactive as possible in this communication, to say we believe that our uses for this building exempts this building from that requirement of offering the taxpayer's asset to someone for $1. So that, in essence, is what it is. Mr. Franzen and his team did point out the wishes of the community through the referendum. It was clear through that this was what the community supported. That was one of the major talking points in our capital referendum, was the need for pre-K in our community. So he did outline that in the letter. I think he did a very good and eloquent job of outlining why we believe this is the case. And we wanted the board's blessing on it. We'll send it off tomorrow, quite frankly, if the board approves this. But happy to answer any questions or if you have any comments you might have as well.
All right. We'll go ahead and make the motion and ask for questions. Do we have a motion to approve this request of confirmation of exemption from Indiana Code 2026 7.1? Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Ms. Hutchison, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Bertrand. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do we know, has there ever been a case where the state has said Nope, you have to sell it.
It's a good question. I don't, I mean, I know there's been challenges in different locations in the state regarding this. There's been, I'm aware of a few situations where it was offered and there were no takers. When you think about it, that's not surprising. Central Elementary's was constructed in 1951. That's quite a commitment to take on if you do not have, the wherewithal to do the work that's necessary in a space like that, to take on a 70,000 square foot facility. And so at that point, in those cases, they were being taken offline completely. They weren't going to be repurposed for something like this. And in that case, the school district then retains possession and then are able to sell the property at an appraised value, perhaps, for another purpose. So it does give those boards flexibility. In our case, we're protecting our asset, B, fulfilling our promise to the community that, we want to repurpose this for our early education. And then obviously, we believe it's also financially a good move than building a new administration center, and the cost that would be incurred with that, with land acquisition and everything that would come with that, and utilities, that we're being smart with the asset that we have. So
In doing it, getting approval before we have much capital outlay as
and
well.
that, and
right?
that's outlined in the letter, right?
yes.
We're making a major commitment to take a good facility, and it is a good solid bones,
Yeah.
but bringing it kind of back to life, so to speak. So
All right. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Send it out tomorrow.
great, thank you.
Final item is a limited license agreement with the City of Lebanon for Fordyce Road, what I would call right of entry.
It is a right of entry, and just making the board aware that I signed a right of entry with the City of Lebanon. Their contractor that is performing the Fordyce Road improvements, Milestone Contractors, to perform that work, they have to, encroach is the right word, on property that is ours.
It's currently ours, and this is part of this will be a coming forward right-of-way dedication in the future. But because, as we discussed before, the building corporation owns the property right in front of Central, but there's a portion of it that is still owned by adjacent to it, that's LCSC. So they have to modify the legal descriptions, and then we'll bring it forward for a formal dedication of right-of-way. So this is allowing them on that property before they, before we have that finalized. So
Kind of a formality, right?
it is a formality, yes. So we can get the road built. So, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Mr. Hendricks, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Clauser? We have a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, last thing is upcoming board meetings, August 20th, budget session here in the community room, and then also regular board meeting. So, with that,